Hi, good afternoon, guys. Welcome. We'll be starting soon, just a couple of minutes until 2 p.m. Something that would be really handy for me is if you could just confirm that you can see and hear either in the question or the chat box that you should have on your GoToWebinar screen, and that would be wonderful, just to make sure that everything is okay. Beautiful. A few messages coming in, let me know it's all good. I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Okay, well, hello everyone. We would just like to thank you all to joining us on today's how-to session on staff approval workflows and user permissions. My name is Sam Bain. I am the Head of Customer Success for Asia Pacific. Before we get started properly, just a little bit of housekeeping. Now, as attendees, you are all set to mute to help with the audio quality. However, if you have any questions during the webinar, there is a questions box in the corner of your screen. Please enter those into the box and I'll be answering questions at the end of the presentation and following up afterwards if we do run out of time. Also, we are recording this session, so everyone who has registered will be sent a link to the recording very soon. Now, in today's session, we're going to be covering a handful of areas and demonstrating how to set up and use staff approvals, as well as show you our new administrator and staff user permissions. We'll start with a quick overview of what we do here at Operoo. I'll take you through staff service forms and how you can set up approval requests that are automatically sent to designated approvers. We'll then start looking at our new user permissions functionality with the type of administrator roles available, new delegated administrative privileges, and new individual permissions for staff. But first, I know there's a mixture of people on this call, from seasoned Operoo users to schools and other organizations just starting their process automation journey with Operoo. Many folks have been using Operoo since our CareMonkey days and have seen the program evolve quite substantially, while new users are just tipping their toes in the water. Either way, there's definitely worth spending a few minutes explaining the full breadth and capabilities you have access to with your Operoo subscription, so that you can take full advantage of the system. Today, we do much more than just managing medical and emergency information, which is what CareMonkey focused on in the early days. Now, Operoo is a digital schools operation platform that automates processes and digitally manages workflows. We're helping thousands of schools and other organizations around the world eliminate slow, expensive, and repetitive paper-based tasks. Operoo enables schools to save time and resources, automating operational tasks and workflows, increasing staff productivity and parental engagement and student participation. Our goal is to empower schools to use every minute and every dollar possible on student education rather than wasting resources on operational inefficiencies. This here is a bird's eye view of Operoo in action. Operoo provides a canvas upon which you can automate any school process. You start with a pre-built template or create your own custom form, request, or piece of communication. Then you add approval workflows step necessary, enabling certain people to authorize content before its distribution. You then automatically distribute that content to any selected audience, be they parents, staff, or students, based on the data attributes known specified recipients within the Operoo platform. As completely cloud-based and mobile-ready solution, you receive responses within minutes from any device or operating system. You then trigger follow-up actions based on responses received, securely collect consent, payment, medical information, and any other data requested. Automated reminders do the chasing for you until missing information is submitted. And finally, you can track, analyze, act on responses received within filters, charts, and dashboards. With Operoo, you can streamline all your recurring day-to-day tasks with one digital platform. Here are some of the major use cases or challenges we help solve. From multi-language school forms and consent for parents and students, to staff and approval workflows, parent communications, payments and ordering, end-to-end trip management, medical data collection and verification, and more. Today, we're going to focus on staff approvals aspects of the system, as well as some of the new user permission features. These user permission capabilities will help you give more granular administrative control to specific staff members who need to perform specific tasks, either related to their job function or a specific event. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive into the meat of today's presentation, starting with staff approval workflows. Approval workflows allow for automated distribution of paperwork and approval requests to designated approvers for review, acceptance, or rejection. These approval processes are really useful, and many of our customers use them for school trip approvals, expense reimbursement approvals, leave approvals, and so on. Multiple stages for approvals can be set up whilst keeping the submitter up to date all of the way through. In a moment, I'll demonstrate how to create a reimbursement form for staff, fill in what they need to be repaid for approved expenses. I'll create a self-service form for staff to complete whenever they have an expense, then show you how to automatically send the completed expense responses right to the right people for approval. The form will include all of the details required for the process, including supporting receipts. So I'm going to be wearing many hats today during today's presentation by swapping between roles in Operoo. Firstly, I'm going to be logged in to Operoo as an administrator of my school, but I will be swapping over and viewing Operoo as a staff member as well. So if I go to my Operoo tab here, now as administrators, we have the ability to view all of the data within Operoo, including students, form responses, medical information, whereas staff views only have permission to access the students and eForms that they are assigned to. You can see here we have all of the students listed, along with their groups in the bottom left-hand corner, with the existing forms in the lower middle. Now, to swap between accounts, you do this by clicking the drop down in the top left-hand corner, and you can see I've linked a couple of my different roles within my organization here as well. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my staff view and go to my form library. So let's start off by looking at what type of self-service form the school has made available for me as a staff member. You can see here self-service forms that I can complete, including bullying incident, sick bay visit, student incident report, as well as a field trip approval and risk assessment forms. Here you can see I'm also using categories for these forms, broken down between incident reports and staff internal requests. You can create your own categories with the account settings as an administrator. So now that we've looked at our current forms, let us go and make a new form together for an expense reimbursement form. Let us switch back over to our administrative view and go back into Mountain Ridge School and go to staff. Now, before we create our reimbursement form, we need to ensure we have our appropriate staff groups set up. Now, if I go to our staff section, you can see that I've created groups for different areas of my organization, as well as a high-level group called approval groups, which has various staff groupings for different processes. Approval workflows use these groups to know who to send the approval request to. For example, the leave approval group will receive approval requests for people requesting leave. Now, if I click on our leave approval group, any of the users in the approving group can approve or reject an eForm once submitted by a staff member. When creating your staff groups, you want them to be appropriate to your organization. You may have groups like financial approval, leave approvers, leadership team, and so on. I already have some groups in here, but for today's demonstration, I'm going to add a new group. And if I go to add and group here, I'm going to call this approval group finance. I'm going to change the parent to be inside of my approval groups and hit save. Now I can use the drag and drop function to add staff into our new group that we've just made, which is this finance one here. So if I go for myself, Brody, and Dylan. So now that I have my group sorted, we can start building our self-service eForm. Now with self-service forms, they are forms that we do not send a notification to the user to complete, but they may be completed at any time and multiple times, whereas something like an event form sends a notification and reminds the user to complete. So if I go to add eForm here and create star form, I'm going to use our Operoo best practice templates, and we have a whole load of templates here. I'm going to be using this reimbursement request form and customize the title. Now we'll be keeping the template using the default questions that will require for our staff to fill in, but you may wish to customize these questions at your own discretion when you're building these in. So first of all, we've got a little bit of a description as to why the staff member is filling this in. We've got the items for reimbursement, so the date, the item, description, the price, and the total amount to be reimbursed, any attached receipts, text box question for additional comments, which I'm going to turn off as required, profile name, and confirming the details are true. Now for here, I want to use the filtered members and show filter. This is going to allow me to either choose a particular group I would like this to be available to, or alternatively, the entire school of 31 members of staff. And I hit save. This will be created for 31 staff. Next, we start entering our approval stages. You can add an unlimited number of approval steps into an eForm. You can customize them to meet any approval process that you need. Each approval step will send an email notification to the appropriate people and request an approve or reject on an eForm that has been submitted by a staff member. Approvers are then reminded every 72 hours if they have outstanding approvals to accept or reject, so approvals don't get forgotten. And by the way, if a staff member who is an approver is away, an administrator can approve on their behalf if necessary. So first of all, we want to add an appropriate name and select one of the approving groups that we discussed. So this is going to be approval for financial reimbursement. Excuse my typing. And I want this to be going to our approval group in finance. Now, you want to check this box here if you want to automatically notify the submitter when the approval stage is completed. There may be times when you don't want to notify a member of staff when something is approved or rejected, and you may prefer to do something like this in person, especially if it's something that's personal. Now, the second box here is allow the submitter to select from the approvers in the approval group. Now, what this will do is this will allow to either choose more than one approver, or alternatively, I can choose something like a manager. So I'm going to say choose a manager. Now, in here as well, we do have the opportunity to add extra stages, which we can set up as consecutive or concurrent approvals. By having the steps happen after the other stages have completed, which is this tick here, this little tick box here, it will only happen after the financial reimbursement is completed. Alternatively, leaving this unchecked will have the approvals all go to the approval groups at the same time. So it depends on what's required here. Now I'm going to delete this extra stage and I'm going to hit save. So now that we're in the settings, I'm going to enable this form right away and turn this into the staff internal requests, as well as in our Operoo form library category as staff internal requests, and then save. Now let's give our form a quick preview of what this will look like to our staff members. So complete this form to be reimbursed for approved expenses, the details, total amount, add a receipt, any additional comments, and the acceptance. Looks good to me. So this request is now available for any of our staff members to view and submit their response, and as many times as required. And whenever that submission is completed, we'll email the appropriate approval members, and they will have a request pending and a reminder every 3 days. So now this is ready, I'm going to swap over to my mobile phone view. Give me 1 second, I'm just going to check that it's okay. It's looking good to me. And I go here. Now, this is my mobile phone sitting next to me. I've set up a meeting so you guys can see it. So if I go into the Operoo app here, just wait for it to do its thing and load up. I've got my different accounts. So because I'm going to be operating this as a staff user, I'm going to log in. And if I go to my form library up here in the top right-hand corner and then form library, I can now see these same forms that we had when we were looking on the desktop. And what I can see here is I've got a reimbursement request form, and I can start filling this information straight away from mobile. So I could go and fill in the date as today's date, my sausage fingers. We're going to say this is a phone for making calls on trips. It was $297, and $297 is our total. The total amount to be reimbursed is $297 because we're just doing one item. I can attach the receipt, which allows me to attach a picture that I've taken on my phone. So I can attach that really nice and easily. Any comments that I might need to share, I can confirm that this information is correct. And now I can see at the bottom is the submission that is going to be sent, and I can choose here who I would like this to go to. So I'm going to be choosing myself here just to save me switching between accounts, but naturally in the real world this would go to our finance manager. Hopefully I wouldn't be able to approve my own expense reports. And then at the bottom of the submission, I just hit submit form. And this is going to prompt our approver with an email notification to let them know that they have an approval that is required. Now, if I wanted, I could go to home here, and I can see this on my mobile phone. I can, just gonna let that finish waiting. I can also swap over to my browser again, and if I go back into my staff view, I can see the submission that is here. So if I go to approve or reject, I've got the information, I can see the current approval steps that are required, I can see the attachment, I can go and download it if I need, and any other information to go along with this. So I could go and say, no, this is too expensive, and save. Now, adding those notes into there, this is letting the member of staff know why I may be accepting or rejecting their request. There may be times where that approver may be on leave or hasn't responded to a request. So saying before, as an administrator, we can always respond on their behalf if need be. Now let's take a look at what the administrators can see about these approval requests. If I use my drop down, I go back to my administrator view. And now I'm going to be going into our form library on the left-hand side here. And we can see the submissions for our reimbursement request form. Administrators will always be able to see the state of any approval request. So I can see the status of where it's up to, what the actual outcome of that was, whether they are pending, accepted, or rejected. So there's full visibility of the approval requests throughout the organization. Now, if I go and view the response, I can see all of this information that's been submitted as the administrator. Now, by using the action buttons on the left-hand side, we have the ability to respond on behalf of the user, we can also archive and print these responses if required. Now, some other examples of staff eForms that require approval workflows could be things like excursion and trip requests, risk assessments, annual leave forms, expense claims, staff appraisal forms, training requests. Now, although this webinar is focused on staff forms, approval workflows are also available for our parent eForms as well. Now, this may be useful for things like leave requests, application for extracurricular activities, or even subject change requests. Now, we've also recently spent some time revamping and adding to our best practice template within our staff eForms. If you have any suggestions for additional best practice forms that we could add, I'm always happy to hear your ideas. Now, let's get back into our presentation. So next, I want to talk about our new user permissions. So as administrators, you'll know there has only ever been two types of administrators, a super and a general administrator, and each type of administrator can see all eForms and responses. Now, many customers asked for a way to hide specific eForms and responses from other administrators. For example, you may want to use Operoo for HR forms, collect bank details, or other sensitive information that you may not want to be visible to all of your administrators. Now you can achieve that with the new custom administrator roles, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. Now, many customers have also asked for the ability to give admin access to a teacher or a staff member for a specific form. Now you can do that too with the eForm delegation function. This is a really powerful thing for school trips and sports activities, events and extracurricular activities, or even staff who manage things like policies, surveys, and agreements. A staff member can now be given admin access to a specific form, enabling them to use all of the admin functions just for that form. And you can use this for things like responding on behalf of, viewing all the responses of, exporting that data, and updating the form. And I'll show you how to use this shortly. Now, whilst many schools and clubs allow their administrators to create and send eForms, many of them also allow their staff members to do the same. The permissions to allow staff to create and enable eForms are found in the settings page, and previously the permissions applied to all staff. This meant you had to give permission to all staff or none of your staff. We've made that much more flexible by allowing you to give these permissions to individual staff. So if you want, 10 of your teachers or staff could be able to create or enable their own eForms. You can now set that up. Now let's get back to the demo and I'll show you how to use these features. Now the first feature I mentioned was new administrator roles. This means you can create custom administrator roles. You need to restrict access to specific eForms. We know there are currently two types of admin, super and general. You may have previously seen under administrators. You could only see the administrator section. Now you can see two extra options, manage roles and assign roles. For example, if you wanted to create a HR related eForm that is only visible to the HR manager, things like bank details, leave, mental health information, the HR manager will be the only person who can see that data in Operoo. In this case, you would create a new role named Human Resources, which you can see that I've created here. This means only those with this role can see this eForm, so now it's really easy to hide sensitive information from those administrators who don't need to have access to it. Now, if I go back to my student area, the next feature I would like to show you is our delegated eForms. There may be times when you need a staff member to have complete access to one eForm as if they were an administrator, but not have access to everything else in Operoo. For example, a teacher in charge of an excursion. As an administrator, I can go into our cross-country winter 2021 form here and click on the lined icon, also known as the burger icon. And I have the opportunity to assign and delegate staff to this form, which is in the top left-hand corner. Now, the assign function here is the same as dragging and dropping a staff member where they will view the responses, the students assigned, and the medical information. Whereas delegate gives the staff member admin access to that form in particular. Now I'm going to add myself to this form and give myself delegation access. Now when I switch over my role using the drop down in the top left-hand corner and I go to my staff profile, in the top right-hand corner, you will see eForms. And in here, I have the My eForms and Delegated eForms function. Now, My eForms is where I have permission to create new eForms. And Delegated eForms is where I can see my cross-country winter 2021, where I may edit the form as if I was an administrator. This is currently the only form I've been delegated by an Operoo administrator, otherwise it would show multiple. From here, I can see the responses. So if I click into our cross-country winter 2021, I can edit the form under the administration role that I've been given. I can also see the different responses that have come in so far. I can also do things like exporting the responses on the data that's here, whether it be PDF or through a spreadsheet. I can also use the actions button to do some other actions that other administrators may be able to do as well. And this is just to this eForm. Now, if I go back to my view as an administrator, which is my admin account here, the final feature that I would like to show you today is about individual staff permissions to create and enable eForms. Now, because we're logged into Operoo as an administrator, we're going to look at the individual user permissions for our staff. For example, you may have an outdoor education team who should be able to create forms without requiring full administration access to Operoo. So if I go to our outdoor education team here, I can click on any one of these staff members by clicking on the lined icon again, and we now have a subsection called permissions. Now this is expandable and editable, so I can see the permissions that are currently listed. And from here, I can go through and create parent and student eForms, enable eForms, and then add any members to the groups and eForms that I create. Now, administrators are also able to set permissions for staff in bulk. So because I'm in my outdoor education team, I can use the actions button in the top left-hand corner to select the displayed staff members. From there, I can go to the actions menu and then add and remove permissions from the selected staff. Now, the following pop-up will display where you can choose one or more permissions to firstly add all of these permissions, and it will not matter about the current permissions. Remove, which will remove the selected permissions if they're applicable, and then replace, which will first remove all of the permissions that you have in place on these users and then replace them with the selected permissions that you've got. So in this case, I want all three of the outdoor education team to have access to create, enable, and add any members. I can then enable that function. Now, if I swap back over to the presentation here, that pretty much covers our new user permission functions. As you've seen, these options can really help effectively manage your Operoo platform. Having deeper, individual, more task-oriented user permissions also enables people throughout your organization to take full advantage of the Operoo platform, while simultaneously making it easy to maintain the highest level of data security and privacy possible. We hope these latest product enhancements can really help get the very best out of your Operoo experience. Now we have some time for some quick Q&A. There's been some questions coming in during the session, and I would just like to take a moment to go through these now. But again, there's a question box in your go-to webinar control panel. So if you have a question, please feel free to enter it into that box and we'll go through them now. We'll be answering any questions that we don't get to today. We'll be following up with the recording to our webinar shortly as well. So let's have a quick look. Carmel says she's been having some problem with the sound. Can anyone else confirm if there's been a problem? But can there be multiple super administrators? Absolutely. So you can have as many super administrators in your organization as possible. You can also create as many of the different types of roles that you may need so they can be assigned to their individual forms. Do you need to be a super administrator to set up permissions for other staff? At the moment, I would need to double check on that, Megan. I have a feeling that might be super and general administrators and they can control the others, but I might come back to you on that and just find out exactly where that lies. Also got another question, when will the user permissions be available to use? So at the moment, individual staff permissions and delegated eForms are available to use now, and then the administrator roles are going to be coming available really soon. What's the difference between the roles of a super and a general administrator? There's a couple of differences. If I go into settings here, when we go to manage roles, we can see the difference that are listed here. So super admins, they can manage other roles, create API keys, modify other admins, change and reset passwords, Stripe payments, SSO links. So I suppose just backpedaling on what you asked before, Sharina, it looks like that only super administrators are the ones that are able to modify the other admins and the roles that are there. What's the difference between delegating a form and assigning a staff member to the form? Really good question, Kayleen. So when you delegate a form to a staff member, this gives them complete access to the form where they can go and make changes to the form itself. They can choose the members that they would like to have access to it. Whereas assigning a staff member to the form will mean that they will only be able to view the responses and the students that are assigned to it. Now, there's another question about how can I see who has completed or has outstanding approvals in Operoo? So currently, when you're logged into Operoo as an administrator, you'll be able to view all of the responses to eForms within the form library. You will see a section that refers specifically to which of the approval stages are currently pending or completed. The approval will also be receiving reminders for outstanding approvals, so it's nice and easy to keep on top of. Are the assigned staff able to sort the responses to a particular class in case there are multiple classes assigned to the form? If you have multiple classes assigned, yes, you'll in the administrative view that a delegated member of staff will have, they will definitely be able to. For assigned staff, I wouldn't know off the top of my head without having a quick look, but let's just double check for you, Sharina. So if I go to, yes, so what it will do is if you had separate groups set up within your form, you would have a view here that would show the various classes that you've got in here or the different groups that you've got it assigned to. So just in answer to your question, Megan, about forms being linked to one another, at the moment, you can automatically have a form send based on responses or once a form is completed, but there may be some setup prerequisite around that. What I might do, Megan, is I might just give you a contact a few days after this webinar just to see what you're trying to do and see if there's a way I can help in a bit more detail. Great, I think that's all for now. Now, I just wanted to thank everyone for your time. We'll be sharing the recording with you shortly for anyone who whoever would like to revisit or have missed our event today. In the meantime, if you have any questions or you would like to contact us, you are most welcome to. My contact details are at the bottom there. And of course, when you're in Operoo at any time, you always have access to our support team who are happy to take your questions.